I saw this video on Twitter. It was taken on a cell phone by someone on the street at a small gay pride parade in London, UK. The neighborhood is called Waltham Forest, which sounds very pretty, doesn't it? Here's what it looked like the other day.
People! Shame on you, you shameless people! Shame on you! Shame on you, despicable people! Shame on you! That's what the racist and fascists say about you! Shame on you!
Welcome to Londonistan. I tell you, our new country is going to be great. Now let me say a few things about this. Let me note some facts. I'll give you my opinion in a moment, but let me just point out some observations. She doesn't swear at anyone or use derogatory slurs. She says shame on you repeatedly. She says the word despicable and shameless. She says God created Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve, which sounds a bit out of place from someone who's surely not, doesn't have a Christian name like Adam or Steve or Eve. What strikes me is the mania, though. Her energetic, manic chanting. Like she was whipping herself up into a bit of a one-woman frenzy. There was some usher or some security organizer who was physically being a barrier between her and that one gay pride marcher with the flag. But I actually don't think that part was necessary. I don't think she was going to hit anyone. I don't think she was going to get physical. But she was just totally off the charts. She was manic. I thought the last line there, I don't know if you heard it shouted back at her by, I presume, someone in the parade. That's what the racists and fascists say about you. Did you hear that part? And there's some truth in it, you know, although I don't recall ever seeing an indigenous white woman in the UK screaming, "You're despicable," at a group of peaceful Muslims walking down the street. I just don't think I've seen that. Not so brazen, not taking a public stand in the middle of the street. I'm sure there are many private instances of racial or just personal insults, but this was someone not just making a quiet comment. This felt like she wanted to lead a counter-protest or something. So I think the comment about this is how people treat you is a bit of an exaggeration. That's actually not how most critics of Islam act, but it does get straight to the heart of it, though, doesn't it? I think it was a revelation for that gay pride activist who hollered back. I wonder if he realizes that the kind of Islam that puts a woman in a one-person body bag with just slits for eyes, yeah, maybe they're not that progressive after all. I mean, if they treat women like that, Muslim women, imagine how they would treat gays, especially gay infidels. Well, no need to imagine. In Iran, the preferred method for dealing with gays is to hang them in the public square. In other countries, like Saudi Arabia, they stone them. I can almost imagine that woman shrieking at someone in Pakistan or Afghanistan for some sexual offense, screaming at someone, say, for being an adulteress. It really feels like a little clip from that left-wing anti-Christian drama called The Handmaid's Tale, which is the most cowardly show on TV. There is no Christian theocracy in the world. There are dozens of countries, though, that are Muslim theocracies to more or less extent. And the women in those Muslim theocracies, especially in Afghanistan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they could only dream of having it as good as they do in The Handmaid's Tale. For one thing, in The Handmaid's Tale, they get to feel the sun and the wind on their faces. I guess if they were to put those actresses in the full burqas on the show, not only would it look too Islamic and not Christian looking, but more to the point, we like to see actors and actresses and their faces. We like to identify with them. A lot of acting is facial expressions. No one wants to watch a TV drama acted out by people in a burqa. No actor wants to be unfamous like that. Here's some censored footage of a woman being stoned to death in Afghanistan a few years back for adultery. It wasn't really adultery, of course. She was just trying to escape a forced marriage, and she was caught, and they put her in a pit, and they stoned her to death. Of course, there may have been women screaming at her, shameless, despicable, etc., but the only people allowed to take rocks and stone her to death there were men, apparently. So the basic facts about what we saw in Waltham Forest. A woman shouted at the gay pride protesters, but she didn't physically touch them. She didn't threaten them. She didn't chase or follow them. She didn't use derogatory slurs against them, didn't call for any harm to come to them, other than the social odium of shame, shame, shame. She was pretty clear about that, wasn't she? Sure, in another place, I bet she would have called for them to be stoned to death, but she didn't actually say that in London. So not to take her side, but really, What crime did she commit there? It is a legal right to say to someone, especially someone having a political protest or demonstration in a public place, it is a legal right to say, shame on you. I think it is. Now, we don't like people dressed up like mailboxes, and that's what Boris Johnson, the new prime minister, once called women in burqas. He called them letterboxes, if you understand the metaphor. We don't like that. We also don't like people who would kill gays and kill women who leave their forced marriages, but I don't think this woman was an illegal immigrant to the UK. Judging by her accent, I think she was either allowed into the UK, even invited in, welcomed in a long time ago as an immigrant, but if you listen to her accent, it wouldn't surprise me if she was actually born in the UK. And that's a bigger problem, don't you think? A lifetime in the UK, and she's still more psychologically and morally at home in Pakistan or Iran than in London. But look at this tweet from the Muslim mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. And I should point out that Sadiq Khan, while he doesn't usually shriek at people, he does engage in some sexual censorship of despicable and shameless women himself, like when he banned these non-Sharia compliant bikini ads from London tube stations. Yeah, he's more clever than that shrieking woman and more effective. But here's his comment on the video of the shrieker. He said, "This was an appalling homophobic attack. Here in London, you are free to be who you want to be and love who you want to love. And hate crimes against the LGBTQ plus community will not be tolerated. The Metro Police are investigating. If you have any information, please call 101. So calling 101 is calling the police over there. Now, again, what this woman did a hate crime? I don't deny she was full of hate. She said as much. But what was the crime? And by the way, does anyone think what she said is not being preached and taught at 1,000 British mosques and schools every day? She just made the mistake of saying it on a high street in English. Here's the cops. Waltham Forest Police. We are aware of footage circulating on social media of abuse directed at those taking part in the Waltham Forest Pride event. We are Waltham Forest STP Pride, and inquiries are underway. Abusing someone because of their sexual orientation or gender identity is a hate crime. If you have been verbally or physically abused, harassed, or attacked in any way by someone because you are, or they think you are LGBT+, they drop the Q. Please report these crimes to police or through a third-party agency. Now, I obviously don't like the Sharia approach to women, sexuality, homosexuality, free expression, etc. Obviously, I mean, just a guess, if you're wearing a medieval body bag and it actually got up to 38 degrees Celsius last week in London, think about that. If you're dressed like that and shrieking at gay pride marchers, I'm guessing you've got strong views about everything from Jews to Western democracy to terrorism. Yeah, our new country is going to be amazing. But of all the things to criminalize, not sure that shouting shame at someone is the thing I'd start with. Pretty sure the problem actually predates that. If you're worried about what you saw there, perhaps the problem is inviting in millions of people who hate gays and believe they have to be stoned to death. And you thought they'd suddenly change their deep-seated hatred on a short plane ride over. Maybe that's the problem. Here's Pew Research with their international surveys on gay rights. They polled gay rights all around the world. Should society accept homosexuality? In Canada, 80% say yes. In most Muslim countries, it's over 90% who say no. Are you still surprised that they say no in the UK shortly after taking the plane over from Pakistan? Now, here's a question for you. How are you going to find that suspect? She's wearing a mask in public. She's dressed in black. How are you going to pick her out of a lineup? That's one reason we don't let people wear masks in public. I think she's rude. I think she does hate gays and probably uncovered women who she regards as dirty. And she probably hates Jews and Christians too, frankly. But I don't actually think we saw a crime there. I mean, if the city won't arrest Antifa street thugs on the left who actually attack people, how can they arrest someone shouting shame for 60 seconds in the face of a parade? But they say it's a crime, and apparently they found her. Look at this tweet a little later in the day. Officers investigating footage circulating on social media of abuse directed at those taking part in a pride event in Waltham Forest have arrested a 38-year-old woman under Section 4A of the Public Order Act. She has been taken into custody at a North London police station. Now, I have to think she turned herself in. How else could they have found her? Do you think the rest of her Sharia family was ashamed by her conduct or actually thrilled and proud of her? We'll see. I just don't know. I can't believe someone like that would ever bend the knee to a secular justice system. I just don't believe she will. I think they dropped charges against her. But back to the parade itself for a moment. It's pretty small. It's not like the huge pride parades, and I don't think there was. Actually, I didn't even see any nudity. I mean, there's some drag queens and whatnot, but I think they were just saying who they were. They're gay. Like it wasn't. So why the extreme reaction? I mean, in Toronto, it's. I mean, these gents have some pants on. But in Toronto, it is quite often, well, they're barefoot all over. Let me just put it that way. They'll practically have sex on the street in Toronto's Pride. It wasn't that way in Waltham Forest. It was tame. I don't know what triggered her particularly. Well, what's going on? What's going on there in Waltham Forest? Well, you've heard of gentrification. That's when yuppies move into a cheap neighborhood, buy up the houses, renovate them, or knock them down and build nice new ones. Pretty soon Starbucks are moving in. Soon it's a hip place to be, up and coming. That's gentrification. What's happening to Waltham Forest? What a pretty name, Waltham Forest. Well, it's not gentrification, it's Islamification. I found that exact location on Google Street Maps by typing in the name of the stores that we saw on the street. So I found the exact location. And if you zoom in up and down the street, it's not gentrified, it's Islamified. There's halal grocery stores. There's Turkish restaurants. There's this store, the Al Ikhlas Boutique, which sells modesty clothing for women. You can still see some non-Muslims on the street. There's even a bar that still sells alcohol for now, but it's pretty clear which direction that neighborhood is going, politically, demographically, religiously. I predict that in 10 years there won't even be a pride parade in Waltham Forest. No bars selling alcohol either. There won't be any customers. And frankly, you won't even see that many uncovered women on the street. When I was in Paris 4 years ago, after the terrorist attack on the Bataclan nightclub, I saw huge neighborhoods in Paris. And I don't mean the far suburbs. I'm talking in the heart of the city itself, where it was just men on the street. Just men. I mean, it would take you a while. What's weird about the street? There's no women. Just guys, drinking coffee, sitting around, not working, probably collecting welfare, I don't know. They were trading conspiracy theories about Jews, which I thought was weird. You saw the occasional woman covered in a hijab rushing from store to store, buying groceries or things for her home, but these guys were just hanging out on the street. To me, it was shocking how a beautiful, romantic, feminine city like Paris was changing. It looked more like something you'd see in Turkey or Pakistan. That's Paris. I think this woman in London was rude. I don't think what she did was a crime, in my view. I'm a free speecher. And I bet you a shilling that they will not prosecute her. I mean, if she were some working class white football hooligan, sure, yeah, they'd throw the book at her. But she's a Muslim woman in a burqa. I mean, you don't want an intifada in the streets, do you? Yeah, no. I know how this is going to end. The thing I'm most interested in is finding that guy who hollered, "That's what the racists and fascists say about you." I sure would be interested to see if this incident did anything to enter his consciousness about where the threat to gay rights and feminism is actually coming from in London in 2019. I wonder if he's putting it all together yet. That's an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. Every day I do a video monologue and then I interview an interesting guest. And then I end by reading my hate mail. But you've got to subscribe to it, which you can do at therebel.media/shows.